Chapter 9 of the Defiant Agents. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by R.J. Davis. The Defiant Agents by Andre Norton. Chapter 9. Travis settled his back against a spire of rock and raised his right hand into the path of the sun, cradling in his palm a disk of glistening metal. Flash, flash. He made the signal pattern just as his ancestors 100 years earlier and far across space had used trade mirrors to relay war alerts among the Chiricahua and White Mountain ranges. If Tase had returned safely, and if Buck had kept the agreed lookout on that peak a mile or so ahead, then the clan would know that he was coming and with what escort. He waited now, rubbing the small metal mirror absently on the loose sleeve of his shirt, waiting for a reply. Mirrors were best, not smoke fires which would broadcast too far the presence of men in the hills. Tase must have returned. "What is it that you do?" Menlik, his Shaw's robe pulled up so that his breeches and boots were dark against the golden rock, climbed up beside the Apache. Menlik, Hulagar, and Kaydessa were riding with Travis, offering him one of their small ponies to hurry the trip. He was still regarded wearily by the Tatars, but he did not blame them for their cautious attitude. Ah! A flicker of light from the point ahead. 1, 2, 3 flashes, a pause, then 2 more together. He had been read. Buck had dispatched scouts to meet them, and knowing his people's skill at the business, Travis was certain the Tatars would never suspect their flanking unless the Apaches purposely revealed themselves. Also, the Tatars were not to go to the rancheria, but would be met at a midpoint by a delegation of Apaches. This was no time for the Tatars to learn just how few the clan numbered. Menlik watched. Travis flashed an acknowledgement to the sentry ahead. "In this way you speak to your men?" "This way I speak." "A thing good and to be remembered. We have the drum, but that is for the ears of all with hearing. This is for the eyes only of those on watch for you. Yes, a good thing. And your people, they will meet with us?" "They wait ahead," Travis confirmed. It was close to midday and the heat, gathered on the rocky waste, was like a heaviness in the air itself. The Tatars had shucked their heavy jackets and rolled the fur brims of their hats far up their heads, away from their sweat-beaded faces. And at every halt, they passed from hand to hand the skin bag of kumis. Now even the ponies shuffled on with drooping heads, picking a way in a cut which deepened into a canyon. Travis kept a watch for the scouts, and not for the first time he thought of the disappearance of the coyotes. Somehow, back in the Tatar camp, he had counted confidently on the animals rejoining him once he had started his return over the mountains. But he had seen nothing of either beast, nor had he felt that unexplainable mental contact with them which had been present since his first awakening on Topaz. Why they had left him so unceremoniously after defending him from the Mongol attack, and why they were keeping themselves aloof now, he did not know. But he was conscious of a threat of alarm for their continued absence, and he hoped he would find they had gone back to the rancheria. The ponies thudded dispiritedly along a sandy wash which bottomed the canyon. Here the heat became a leaden weight and the men were panting like four-footed beasts running before hunters. Finally Travis sighted what he had been seeking, a flicker of movement on the wall well above. He flung up his hand, pulling his mount to a stand. Apaches stood in full view, bows ready, arrows on cords, but they made no sound. Kaydessa cried out, booted her mount to draw equal with Travis. A trap! Her face, flushed with heat, was also stark with anger. Travis smiled slowly. "Is there a rope about you, Wolf Daughter?" he inquired softly. "Are you now dragged across this sand?" Her mouth opened and then closed again. The quirt she had half raised to slash at him flopped across her pony's neck. The Apache glanced back at the two men. Hulagar's hand was on his sword hilt, his eyes darting from one of those silent watchers to the next. But the utter hopelessness of the Tatar position was too plain. Even Menlik made no move toward any weapon, even his spirit wand. Instead, he sat quietly in the saddle, displaying no emotion toward the Apache save his usual self-confident detachment. "We go on." Travis pointed ahead. Just as suddenly as they had appeared from the heart of the golden cliffs, so did the scouts vanish. Most of them were already on their way to the point Buck had selected for the meeting place. There had been only 6 men up there, but the Tatars had no way of knowing just how large a portion of the whole clan that number was. Travis's pony lifted his head, nickered, and achieved a stumbling trot. Somewhere ahead was water, one of those oases of growth and life which pocked the whole mountain range, to the preservation of all animals and all men. Menlik and Hulagar pushed on until their mounts were hard on the heels of the two ridden by the girl and Travis. Travis wondered if they still waited for some arrow to strike home, though he saw that both men rode with outward disregard for the patrolling scouts. A grass leaf bush beckoned them on, and again the ponies quickened pace, coming out into a tributary canyon which housed a small pool and a good stand of grass and brush. To one side of the water Buck stood, his arms folded across his chest, armed only with his belt knife. Grouped behind him were Dekay, Taché, Nolan, Manulito. Travis tabulated hurriedly. Manulito and Dekay were to be classed together, or had been when he was last in the rancheria. On Buck's stairway from the past, both had halted more than halfway down. Nolan was a quiet man who seldom spoke, and whose opinion Travis could not foretell. Taché would back Buck. Probably such a divided party was the best Travis could have hoped to gather. A delegation composed entirely of those who were ready to leave the past of the Redacts, a collection of Bucks and Jaylees, was outside the bounds of possibility. But Travis was none too happy to have Dekay in on this. Travis dismounted, letting the pony push forward by himself to dip nose into the pool. "This is," Travis pointed politely with his chin, "Menlik, one who talks with spirits; Hulagar, who is son to a chief; and Kaydessa, who is daughter to a chief. They are of the horse people of the north." He made the introduction carefully in English. Then he turned to the Tatars. "Buck, Dekay, Nolan, Manulita, Taché." He named them all. "These stand to listen and to speak for the Apaches." But sometime later, when the two parties sat facing each other, he wondered whether a common decision could come from the clansmen on his side of that irregular circle. Dekay's expression was closed. He had even edged a short way back, as if he had no desire to approach the strangers. And Travis read into every line of Dekay's body his distrust and antagonism. He himself began to speak, retelling his adventures since they had followed Kaydessa's trail, sketching in the situation at the Tatar-Mongol settlements as he had learned it from her and from Menlik. He was careful to speak in English, so that the Tatars could follow all he was reporting to his own kind. And the Apaches listened blank-faced, though Taché must already have reported much of this. When Travis was done, it was Dekay who asked a question. "What have we to do with these people?" "There is this." Travis chose his words carefully, thinking of what might move a warrior still conditioned to riding with the raiders of a